I'm so scared. I don't know what to do. Hey, look at me. We'll figure this out.
How? This is too much. Together, I promise.
She didn't leave him because she didn't love him. She left him because she was tired of struggling, tired of hoping things would change, tired of waiting for a future that never came. And the night she walked away, she thought she was choosing a better life. She had no idea. She was walking away from the man he was about to become. Ethan and Clara didn't start with wealth. They started with belief. The kind of belief that makes two people think love is enough to survive anything. In the beginning, it really felt like it was. They were happy, not because they had everything, but because they had each other. They laughed over simple things, shared meals without complaining, talked about the future like it was already theirs. Back then, struggle didn't feel permanent. It felt temporary, but life has a way of stretching temporary problems into something heavier. Months passed, then years, and nothing changed. Ethan worked hard, every day, different jobs, long hours, endless effort, but no matter how much he tried, it never seemed to be enough. The money was never enough. The progress was never enough. The hope started to fade. Clara felt it first, not because she stopped loving him, but because she was tired of waking up every day to the same problems, tired of believing things would get better when nothing ever did. The small room they once loved began to feel suffocating. The laughter disappeared. The conversations became shorter. The silence grew louder until one evening, everything finally broke. The power was out again. The room was dark, hot, uncomfortable. Ethan sat down, exhausted, his body heavy from a long day that changed nothing. Clara stood by the window, arms folded, thinking, "How long are we going to live like this?" she asked. Her voice was soft, but filled with everything she had been holding in. Ethan didn't respond immediately, because he didn't have an answer. "I'm trying," he said finally. Clara nodded slowly. "I know." And that was the problem. "I wake up every day hoping something will change," she said, "but nothing ever does." Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, he saw it clearly. She was breaking, not from lack of love, but from too much struggle. "I just need more time," he said, but even he knew time wasn't the problem anymore. Clara shook her head. "We've been saying that for years, Ethan." Her voice cracked. "I love you." She paused, then quietly, "But I can't keep living like this." Those words hit harder than anything else. Ethan stayed calm, not because it didn't hurt, but because deep down, he understood. "So what are you saying?" he asked softly. Clara hesitated, just for a second. Then, "I think I need to leave." Silence, the kind that changes everything. Ethan didn't argue, didn't beg, didn't shout. He just nodded. "Okay." That one word broke something inside her, because she realized something in that moment. He wasn't fighting for her, not because he didn't love her, but because he was too tired to hold on to someone who was already letting go. That night, she packed her things, and just like that, their story ended, not with anger, not with hate, but with exhaustion. The night she left, the room didn't feel empty. It felt louder, because for the first time in years, Ethan was alone with his thoughts, and there was nothing left to distract him from the truth. After Clara left, the room didn't change. The same walls, the same mattress, the same silence, but everything felt different. Her voice was gone, her presence gone, even the small things, the way she moved around the room, the quiet conversations, the feeling that someone was there, all gone. Ethan sat exactly where she left him, on the edge of the bed, not moving. Minutes passed, then hours. He didn't cry. He didn't shout. He just sat there, staring at nothing. Because sometimes, pain doesn't come loudly. Sometimes, it settles quietly inside you. The next morning, nothing felt real. He woke up out of habit, turned to the side, as if she would still be there, but she wasn't. That's when it hit him. Not the breakup, not the words, but the absence, the space she used to fill. Ethan got up slowly, The room felt bigger, colder. He looked around. Everything reminded him of her. The corner where she used to sit, the cup she always used, the silence she once filled. And for a moment, he allowed himself to feel it. The failure, the disappointment, the truth he had been avoiding. He wasn't enough. Not for her, not for the life they wanted. And that realization hurt more than losing her. Days passed. Ethan stopped going out as much, stopped talking to people. The world outside continued, but his didn't. Friends called. He ignored them. Opportunities came. He didn't chase them, because deep down, something inside him had broken. Until one day, something changed. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just a thought. What if she was right? He sat with that question, longer than he wanted to. What if I really wasn't doing enough? That question didn't comfort him. It challenged him. And slowly, that pain began to shift from sadness to something else, something quieter, stronger, responsibility. Ethan stood up, walked to the mirror, looked at himself, really looked. For the first time, he didn't see a victim. He saw a man who had been waiting for life to change, instead of changing it himself. And in that moment, something inside him settled. No noise, no announcement, just a decision. Losing her didn't change his life overnight, but it changed something inside him. For the first time, Ethan stopped blaming life and started looking at himself. Microphone hash script. Days turned into weeks. And slowly, the silence became normal. Ethan still woke up early, still moved through the same routine. But something was different. He was thinking more, not about Clara, not about the past, but about himself. For the first time, he asked a question he had been avoiding for years. Why is my life still the same? It wasn't an easy question, because deep down, he already knew the answer. He had been waiting for opportunities, waiting for luck, waiting for something outside of him to change everything. But nothing ever did. And now, he had no one else to blame. Not Clara, not the world, just himself. That realization was uncomfortable, but it was also powerful, because for the first time, he felt something different. Control. Ethan stood up one morning and didn't reach for his phone. He didn't sit around, didn't overthink. He just moved. He stepped outside, walked through the streets, observed people. People who had less than him, but were still pushing. People who had more, because they didn't stop trying. That day, he didn't change his life, but he changed his mindset. And that was where it started. He began doing small things differently. Waking up earlier, moving with purpose, paying attention, learning, not for anyone else, not to prove anything, but because he was tired of being the same person. The same man who kept saying, things will get better, without doing anything different. And slowly, very slowly, that man began to disappear. For the first time in a long while, Ethan wasn't waiting for life to happen. He was moving, not because everything was perfect, but because he was done staying the same. The next few days were different, not dramatically, not overnight, but in small, consistent ways. Ethan began waking up earlier than usual, before the noise of the day, before distractions, just him and his thoughts. He started reading again, learning things he had ignored for years, not because someone told him to, but because he finally understood something. His life was going to change. He had to be the one to change it. He began observing opportunities around him, small ones, everyday ones, things he had always overlooked. Conversations, problems people complained about, gaps that needed solutions. For the first time, he wasn't just living inside his routine. He was studying life itself. One day, he approached a small business owner he used to pass by daily. They talked, not as strangers, but as people trying to understand each other. That conversation opened a door. Not immediately, not magically, but it planted a seed. Ethan didn't rush, didn't force results. He stayed consistent, showed up, learned, improved, and slowly, People began to notice, not because he announced himself, but because his attitude had changed. He listened more, spoke with purpose, carried himself differently. There was something new about him, something quiet but noticeable. The same man who once waited for life to change was now actively participating in it. And even though he wasn't rich yet, he was no longer stuck, because progress had begun. Ethan didn't become successful overnight, but one simple opportunity became the moment everything started to shift. Not because it changed his life instantly, but because it proved he was finally moving in the right direction. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan stayed consistent, waking up early, showing up on time, paying attention to details others ignored. He no longer moved like someone waiting to be rescued. He moved like someone building something. At first, nothing changed. No recognition, no applause, no sudden success. Just routine, just effort, just quiet progress. But Ethan had learned something important. Growth doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it hides in repetition. Then one afternoon, something shifted. The business owner he had spoken to earlier reached out to him again. This time, the conversation was different. Not casual, not passing, but intentional. They had been observing him, watching how he carried himself, how he worked, how he communicated. And they noticed something. He was dependable. He didn't complain, didn't avoid responsibility, didn't act entitled. He simply showed up and delivered. And in a world where many people start strong but quit early, that alone made him stand out. So they gave him an opportunity, a small role, nothing big, nothing life-changing on the surface. But for Ethan, it meant everything, because it was his first real step forward. Not given out of pity, not handed as charity, but earned. Ethan accepted it with gratitude, not excitement alone, but seriousness. He understood something others often miss. Small opportunities are tests for bigger ones. So he treated it like it mattered. He arrived early, stayed attentive, listened more than he spoke, learned quickly, improved daily. And slowly, people began to notice a difference in him, not just in what he did, but in how he carried himself. There was more confidence in his voice, more clarity in his thinking, more purpose in his actions. He wasn't trying to impress anyone, but his consistency was speaking for him. Over time, his responsibilities increased, not because he asked, but because he proved he could handle more. And that's how growth began. Quietly, gradually, naturally. One evening, after finishing his work, Ethan sat alone and reflected. He wasn't rich. He wasn't where he wanted to be. But something had changed. He was no longer stuck. He had direction. He had momentum. He had belief. And for the first time in a long while, he felt in control of his own future. Not because everything was perfect, but because he had finally started moving forward. And that realization meant more than any quick success ever could. Ethan didn't become rich overnight, but something was changing. People who once overlooked him were now starting to take him seriously. And slowly, his life began to respond. Weeks turned into months, and Ethan stayed consistent. The same habits, the same discipline, the same mindset. But now there was progress. The small role he once accepted was no longer small. He had grown within it. More responsibilities were added to his name. More trust was placed on his shoulders. And Ethan handled it. Not perfectly, but reliably. And reliability is something people value deeply. He began to stand out naturally. In meetings, his input was clearer, his thinking more structured, his confidence more visible. He no longer second-guessed himself as much, because experience had started replacing doubt. People around him noticed, not loudly, not dramatically, but in subtle ways. The way he spoke, the way he carried himself, the way he solved problems. There was a difference. Ethan wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. He was just focused on becoming better. And that focus began to separate him from others. Opportunities started to come his way, not because he chased them aggressively, but because his work began to speak for him. He built trust. He built reputation. He built consistency. And over time, that combination opened more doors. Financially, things began to improve. Not suddenly, but gradually. Enough for him to feel the difference. Enough to breathe easier. Enough to plan ahead. He upgraded small parts of his life, improved his appearance, organized his environment, invested in himself, not to impress others, but to reflect the change he was experiencing internally. And for the first time in a long while, Ethan wasn't just surviving. He was building something stable, something real, something that had direction. And even though he hadn't reached his ultimate goal yet, he could see the path clearly now. Ethan didn't announce his success, but people began to respond to him differently. The same man who was once ignored was now being asked for his opinion, and slowly, his presence began to carry weight. By now, Ethan's consistency had done something powerful. It had built a reputation. People no longer saw him as just another worker, or just another face in the room. They saw someone reliable, someone thoughtful, someone capable. In meetings, his voice was no longer silent. When he spoke, people listened, not because he spoke the most, but because what he said made sense. His ideas were clear, his thinking was structured, his confidence was calm, not forced. Ethan had developed something many people struggle to build: credibility. And credibility changes everything. Opportunities started coming more naturally. He was invited into discussions he wasn't part of before, given responsibilities that required trust, asked to contribute ideas that mattered. And each time, he delivered, not perfectly, but consistently. And consistency reinforced trust. People began to rely on him, not just for tasks, but for judgment, for input, for direction. Ethan noticed a change, not in a loud or obvious way, but in how people treated him. More respect, more attention, more inclusion. And internally, he felt the difference too. He was no longer uncertain about himself. He no longer questioned whether he belonged, because his growth had already answered that question. He had earned his place, not through shortcuts, but through effort, not through luck, but through discipline. And now, he stood in a position where his past struggles no longer defined him. What defined him now was progress. And with that progress came confidence, not arrogance, not pride, but a quiet understanding of his own value. Ethan had changed, and the world around him had begun to recognize it. Ethan had worked quietly for months, but one decision, one opportunity, changed the trajectory of his entire life. This was the moment everything he had been building finally paid off. It started like any other day. Ethan arrived early, as usual, focused, prepared, ready, but something was different that morning. There was an important meeting scheduled, one that involved key decision-makers, people with influence, people who didn't just observe. They decided outcomes. Ethan wasn't the most senior person in the room, but he had been invited. And that alone was a sign of how far he had come. As the meeting began, ideas were discussed, problems were presented, solutions were needed. People spoke, some confidently, some cautiously. Then it was Ethan's turn. He didn't rush, didn't overcomplicate. He listened first, then responded with clarity. His ideas weren't loud, but they were structured, thoughtful, practical, and most importantly, relevant. As he spoke, the room became quieter. People started paying close attention, not out of obligation, but interest. He wasn't just speaking anymore. He was contributing value. By the end of the discussion, something had shifted. His input stood out, not because he tried to dominate the room, but because his perspective made sense. After the meeting, one of the key decision-makers approached him. They didn't dismiss him. They didn't overlook him. They acknowledged him. And that moment was significant, because recognition at that level means opportunity at a higher level. Ethan was given more responsibility, more visibility, more trust, and with that came a shift in his position. He was no longer just part of the system. He was becoming someone within it, someone whose voice mattered. That day, Ethan didn't just grow professionally. He stepped into a new phase of his life, one where his past struggles were no longer the focus, and his future was now expanding in front of him. Ethan didn't just become successful, he became someone he never used to be. And in the end, it wasn't money that changed his life the most. It was the person he had become along the way. Months passed after that breakthrough meeting. Ethan's life continued to evolve. Opportunities that once seemed distant were now within reach. His role expanded, his responsibilities increased, and with each step forward, his confidence grew stronger. Not loud confidence, not arrogance, but a calm, grounded assurance. He was no longer the man who doubted himself at every step. He was someone who understood his value, and more importantly, someone who had earned it. Financially, his situation improved significantly. He could take care of himself comfortably, plan ahead, live with stability. But what stood out most was not what he had gained externally. It was how he had changed internally. The discipline, the consistency, the mindset, those things had reshaped his life completely. And then, one evening, something unexpected happened. Ethan received a message from someone he hadn't heard from in a long time. Clara. For a moment, he paused, not because he was shocked, but because the past had suddenly resurfaced. He read the message, calmly, silently. There was no anger in him, no bitterness, no resentment, just closure. The man who once sat broken in silence was no longer there. He had moved forward, built himself, found purpose, and as he looked back, he realized something important. That breakup wasn't just an ending, it was a turning point. The moment that forced him to grow, to reflect. Stories end, but wisdom stays. If you believe stories can change the way we see life, welcome to Echoes of Wisdom. Subscribe and let every story leave you better than it found you.